You're just volunteering your time, you're responding to emergency calls, and all of this stuff. It was very hard to, and it just grew and grew and grew until the point where they realized that as long as the majority of the board would vote to continue the master repair plan, there was not much they could do without just recalling the board.
A regular highlight of the HOA Insights podcast is our Board Heroes feature, where we dedicate one episode each month to celebrate the remarkable efforts of HOA board members. To us, a board hero is one of the 2 million elected volunteers who deserve recognition for excelling in a role that often goes unnoticed. Today, we're excited to spotlight one of these exceptional board heroes and share their inspiring story. If you match our definition of a board hero or know someone who does, please reach out to us. Our contact details and those of our sponsors are provided in the show notes.
Welcome back to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. I'm Robert Nordland, and I'm here today for episode number 112 with another one of the board heroes we're proud to celebrate. Helen is a regular listener and a former board member who submitted her crazy story, and it was indeed crazy and fantastic, and we followed up with her and wanted to schedule her on the program so we could share her story with you. Well, I hope you enjoyed last week's episode 111 with regular co-host and insurance expert Kevin Davis, learning more fascinating insights into his world of insurance. And that's always good information to have at your disposal, with insurance being a regular hot topic with pricing and coverage and just a lot of news about what's going on there. So if you missed that episode or any other prior episodes, you can find them on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, on your favorite podcast platform, or on our YouTube channel. But better yet, subscribe to the podcast in order to get every episode delivered right to your phone or mobile device. Well, those of you watching on YouTube can see my HOA Insights mug here. One of my favorite cartoons that we have, and it's something that you can get from our merch store, which you can browse through from our hoainsights.org website or from the show notes. And you'll find we have plenty of free items there, like board member Zoom backgrounds and some specialty items like that mug for sale. But you can get one for free. So just go to our merch store, pick out the mug you'd like, and email me at podcast@reservestudy.com, mentioning episode 112 mug giveaway. And if you're the 10th person, we'll ship it to you free of charge. Well, as you know, we enjoy hearing from you, and most episodes are in response to a topic that you've recommended. So do stay in contact, letting us know what questions you have, topics that you'd like to hear more about, or some of your crazy stories. And so leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. Leave a comment on the YouTube video, or send us an email at podcast@reservestudy.com. But back to today's episode. I've built it as a crazy story, but it's really not a crazy story. It's a real story. And Helen, and I'll use just her first name here because of the story you're about to hear, she's been a board member for 15 years at her large, over 200-unit Southern California Condo Association. Just the basics about her association: they have a 5-member board, and they have on-site professional management. They made it through COVID okay, but their association had an adverse reaction to the balcony inspection requirement here in California. That law, for your information, went into effect in 2020. It required any condo association with 3 units or more with any exterior structural wood elements supporting humans, so think balconies and decks and stairs and things like that, more than 6 feet above the ground, safety ideal, to have an inspection at least every 9 years, with the first inspection required prior to December 31st, 2024. So first inspection was supposed to be done just a few months ago. Now, from my point of view as a reserve study provider, it all sounded like a pretty reasonable law with a 5-year implementation time period. And we were aware of that because that legislation passed largely in response to a 2015 balcony collapse in Berkeley, California that killed 6 people. So the law went into place in 2020. First inspection required before the end of 2024. And Helen, again, I said it sounds reasonable to me, but what started to happen at your association because of that balcony inspection requirement?
Yeah, we were notified about the new law by our property management company. They were pretty great about letting us know what was coming down down the pike. We thought that we should really jump on these inspections.
Don't want to wait till the last minute.
Yeah, we were thinking, okay, everyone has to do this. It's a state mandate. Every inspection company in the state is about to get very busy. So let's get on this very quickly. So we scheduled our inspections. First, we scheduled some inspections of the load-bearing elements. So the inside of the balconies, the inside of the stairwells, and that required drilling some holes. So it required some coordination. It took a lot longer than we realized. The company did a third of our balconies kind of at random and then extrapolated those results to say, well, we've seen pretty much everything looks the same that we've opened up. So we can kind of say with confidence that probably the rest of the complex is going to look the same. We had another company come in and look at the waterproofing. They said, yes, your waterproofing is old, which is no surprise because your building is old and the waterproofing hasn't been replaced.
Okay.
Across the complex, and individual balconies may have been worked on for various reasons, but big complex, and we just didn't have all of that done. So basically, two companies said, what we recommend at this point is that you come up with a master repair plan. At the time, I did not know what that was, but now I have learned that it's just a coordinated plan where if you have a large complex, a lot of different balconies and stairs, and they all need pretty much the same types of repair, then it's a way of coordinating those repairs, making sure you have all the plans and the permits in place. So by the time you hire the contractor, then the contractor can pull all the permits that they need or that they might need. So once they start the work, maybe they open up a balcony, it needs one particular kind of repair. They're ready to go. They've got the permits. Another balcony might need a bit more significant repair. So it's kind of a way to coordinate, a way to organize. So they walked us through that process. They said, yeah, we'll get the plans, we'll get the permits. We will, then you'll go out to bid. We'll get a contractor. You'll choose a contractor. And then the contractor, by that time, will have all the permits ready for them to do the work.
That sounds pretty much like a normal process. Now, you said an older building. Tell me how old.
It was built in 1971.
Okay, and I'm guessing this is probably 2021 or 2022, so we're talking 50 years. And so not surprising. A 50-year-old building with some wood structural elements. This is Southern California, so was it original siding and a lot of original type things?
Yeah, mostly original siding. Yeah, it was a mixture. But for the balconies and the stairs that were being inspected, most of it was original.
Okay, so you weren't really all that surprised that they were finding that, this looks like a 50-year-old building that's got some things to do. Okay, so then you got the inspection done, then they went through the permit process, you got some bids, and tell me what was that kind of number?
We didn't get to the bidding stage. What we did was we got... The engineer recommended that we also start working on financing early because he said it can take a long time to get financing in place. At the same time that they're working on the plans and the permits, we could also start working on the financing so that all the pieces would come together kind of in the same time frame, and one thing wouldn't be held up on another thing. But what we did was we got rough cost estimates just for the purposes of informing the financing. And so the engineer contacted a contractor who just had just took a sort of overview of the project, got some very basic details and said, you're probably looking at, this, and he gave us a number. And it was, a big number. So we're like, okay, yeah, millions of dollars. So like, okay, and so we moved on to work on how we were going to raise that amount of money because it was a lot more than we had in our reserve.
Because your reserves are for classically painting and roofing and asphalt and things like that, and not fixing siding and fixing balconies and 50-year-old retrofit type things. Okay, so you started thinking, there's going to be this much money. Were you thinking special assessment? Were you thinking loan? What wheels were moving? We
thought special assessment was going to be inevitable because we didn't have the money in our reserves. But because our reserves were in fairly good shape, could have been better, could have been worse.
Yeah.
So the plan was to get the loan to pay the work, and then we would special assess people to pay back the loan. The benefit to the homeowners would be that in that case, they could pay over a much more extended period of time than if we just special assessed them. The special assessment would have been in a much shorter time frame and been much more burdensome. But the loan we could spread out over 5 to 10 years. And then even though it's still a lot of money, it would spread it out and kind of make the best of a bad situation kind of thing. We were in good shape to get a loan. We were even pre-approved to get a loan because of the strength of our financials and our reserve funding. So that's kind of where we got to.
Yeah. And then you're communicating this to the homeowners that there's this new law, and that's why people are drilling into some places, and they're here legitimately. We're looking at how we're doing. I imagine you're keeping the homeowners posted, and we realize it's going to be expensive, so we're investigating a loan. You're communicating, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. So then what began to happen?
There was just a huge amount of, I think, probably shock initially, and then questioning, and then organized resistance to the plan.
When I see a building, I can tell a new building versus an old building, and old buildings, like everything in life, older things get tired and older things need more work than newer things. Are we talking about people who can't see the reality of the situation, or are they just so tight money focused that talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think it just goes to people's expectations of living in a condo, which I know you've addressed in other podcasts. Their ideal is they expect to just pay the monthly dues and everything else is taken care of.
Magic.
And so magic, yes. And so any special assessment just is a huge shock to people and comes across as, well, the board failed maybe because we have to have the special assessment. The special assessment would have been significant. The loan repayments would have been significant. So I don't want to discount, like say it was trivial. It wasn't trivial. And, you know, it would have been a huge stretch for many homeowners. But
Helen, without giving away anything, and I got my calculator here, I should have asked you this beforehand. What was the potential size of the special assessment compared to home value?
So I would say home value, let's ballpark 500,000. Very, very broad ballpark. And the special assessment would have been around 16,000 if it was, lump sum. Okay,
so we're talking 3%. Okay, so it's not like this is going to kill their home value, but we're talking thousands of dollars. Okay. Homeowners were taken aback, even though you had fed them the news. It's one of those things where maybe they were hear no evil, see no evil, think no evil. They didn't want to hear it until it started to become real. And then they started to push back a bit.
We've been talking about this for a long time, probably since 2021 when we started having these inspections. I think most homeowners didn't really pay too much attention until there were dollar amounts talked about. And so, most homeowners don't come to board meetings, so they weren't really part of the conversation, or they didn't listen to the conversation that the board members were having. Maybe many don't read the minutes that get emailed out of the open session. So I think
you can even say most don't read the meeting minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know.
We can speak the truth here.
Yeah. And I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
It came as it's sort of like, oh my gosh, this is so sudden. And from the board's point of view, like, we've been thinking about nothing else for 2 years now. But from the homeowner's perspective, it was like, this is absolutely shocking, sudden, terrible, just big reaction. That led to just a ton of questioning about, how do you know we need to do this? What does this law actually say? You're not interpreting the law correctly. The law doesn't actually say we need to do repairs. It just says we need to do inspections, which is interesting because we have a fiduciary duty as a board member to do repairs that we're aware of. But looking at the letter of the law, they were looking for something that said you absolutely must do the repairs that the inspector tells you should do.
Okay, let me stop you right there. You have an on-site manager.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have professional legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and is this a part-time divorce lawyer, or is this someone in the community association law field?
No, they're in the community association law field, and they also recommended that we do the the master repair plan.
Yeah.
Basically.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming the homeowners are, and I'm stereotyping now, Google attorneys, where they'll Google something
Oh,
and
yeah,
make up their own mind.
yes. Well, and some of them are even in the engineering field. Some of them are in the, the legal field. So, architectural field. So, everyone can claim to know better than another professional.
But you used a key word there. You appreciated that you were a fiduciary.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to act in the best interest of the association, and that's what you were doing. You were confronted with the facts, you were confronted with the law, and you're moving down that path thinking that, gee, and you said for a couple of years, that's all we can think of because we see this big tidal wave coming, and it is going to dominate everything we do. Forget patio furniture, forget restriping the asphalt. We got a big guy here. Okay, so what did that begin to look like politically or culture-wise at your association?
Yeah, so a very large opposition group formed. I'm sure they started small, but then they grew very quickly. They were very well organized. They would meet frequently on Zoom. They would put out flyers all over the complex. All over the complex with things that were just patently untrue about the project and the way that it has materialized, and they were disparaging the vendors that we were working with, implying that they were corrupt. I mean, just as time went on, this sort of got worse and worse and worse, where, implying that the board members were corrupt, implying that the property management company was corrupt, even the HOA lawyer was corrupt. Everyone was in cahoots with everybody, and it must be some mass conspiracy, and everybody must be in the pockets of everybody else, and we're all getting kickback. We just got totally demonized, and the idea that any of us were acting in good faith was just not even in the realm of possibility in their minds. So that was very hard, but the message was very strong, and it was very hard to fight against, because it was, if you join our group, we will save you from a special assessment. That's like magic. That's so compelling to people. If you act in a certain way, we will save you money. And nothing we could say to try and dispel the myths and the lies and everything else that they were saying about the project, and nothing seemed to be able to offset that promise that if you do what we say, we will save you money and you will not have a special assessment.
That's a compelling story, even if it's untrue. And again, I come at this from someone who looks at buildings for a living. There is a reality to building deterioration that you just can't fight. Now, in the meantime, I imagine right now, I'm getting the hairs on the back of my neck are sticking up. And for a lot of our listeners, it's thinking, gee, that can happen. During this time period, you're keeping your cool. You are having regular board meetings. Are they making life just horrible there at the association?
Yes, as time went on, it just got worse and worse and worse. And just with the very public, notices about how, certain board members were not acting in the best interests of the association, which as a board member is a terrible thing to say. I mean, it actually was more pointed than that. But even if it wasn't, I think just as a board member to be told that you're not doing what, acting in the best interests of the association is just, when you do so much, you're volunteering, you're not getting any money at all, let alone kickbacks. You're just volunteering your time, you're responding to emergency calls, and you're all of this stuff. So it was very hard to and it just grew and grew and grew
until the point that
until the point where they realized that as long as the majority of the board would vote to continue the master repair plan, there was not much they could do without just recalling the board.
Okay.
That was like the nuclear option. They went the nuclear option.
Okay. Well, that's a great point to make, and that's a great time to take a quick break to hear from one of our generous sponsors. After we'll hear the rest of the story from Helen.
Numbers matter, and we need numbers like game scores and bank balances to let us know where we stand. The same is true for your association. Is yours thriving or struggling? Let me introduce you to the FIFO Health Score, like your own personal FICO credit score. Now in one simple number, owners and boards can learn the combined financial, physical, and operational health of their association. The good news, it's free at ourfipho.com. That's our, FIPHO.com. Learn how your association measures up.
And we're back. Okay, Helen. So tell me what happened next.
So what happened next is we had a election coming up. And in that election, the opposition group, part of their campaign was telling people how to vote in this upcoming election, with the goal of removing one of the board members who would vote for the master repair plan. So basically switching the majority of the board to be against the master repair plan. Long story short, they did that. They rallied everyone to vote a certain way. And they did that. And then shortly after that, they initiated a recall election. They told everyone to vote again, how to vote this way to pull off these two people, the remaining people who would vote for the master repair plan, and we're going to replace them with people who are against the master repair plan. And so basically they succeeded in that too. And so now we have a new board who are taking us in a different direction, although I think they may slowly start to drift back to the original direction, but well, we can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. I want to get to that. But the very tempting story that, and I like your words, if you act in this way, we will save you money. We're talking 21, 22, 23, those kind of time frames where this is going on, and that's either in COVID or post-COVID, when people are maybe a little more distrustful of the people in authority. And so that's really bad timing for this board. You've taken good care of the property for a long time. You've had open board meetings. I imagine you have a newsletter. You regular have board meeting. Well, yeah, you told me they aren't reading the board meeting minutes. And all through this, you're trying to do the right thing. But now they're the board, but you put a seed in this conversation where he said they may not be able to follow through with their entire plan. And that's because you still got a 50-year-old building.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for everyone not watching, Helen's nodding her head.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Reality is reality.
Let's talk about the reality, because we hear about recalls where the opposing faction thinks the board is stealing. The opposing faction thinks there's kickbacks or whatever, or they're wasting money on this. And the new board comes in and looks at the bank balance and realizes that, oh, no, I guess they weren't stealing. So this new board has made a lot of promises, and they still have a 50-some-year-old building with some licensed professionals that have said you need to do a lot of work to keep it good and safe. So what do you start to see here?
Well, as expected, and as they told us that they would, the opposition group said, when we recall the board, these are the things that the new board is going to do for us. And they laid it all out. We're going to, fire certain vendors. We're going to cancel the master repair plan. We're going to, and this is our kind of, this is our policy statement kind of thing. And they're basically working their way through that list. They have canceled the master repair plan. They're working on changing vendors. But we still have balconies to repair. And they've also made a lot of promises that they're going to fix all kinds of things in the building that haven't been fixed. They know exactly how much money we have, and they know what needs to be repaired, and now they have to figure it out.
Okay. Did they promise to lower the monthly assessments?
No.
Okay.
They would probably expect that they need to be raised, every year, but not to cover these big projects.
Okay, so the big deal was avoiding the big special assessment, the big loan, not necessarily we're going to take our assessments down from 425 to 375 back in the good old days.
No, thankfully everyone is at least on board with the fact that there's inflation and operating costs increase every year. So that part at least is understood. But in terms of funding these large repair projects, there isn't really a plan. But it's interesting because they seem in a short time they've been in their role, they seem to be accepting now that they do need to do balcony repairs. It's not just an inspection. So that's good. Okay. So they do need to do balcony repairs. They've also accepted that as part of a cheaper plan, I think they were wanting to cherry pick some inspections versus others, because we had a few different contractors inspect the balconies, and they were like, "Oh, we'll pick the lowest, the cheapest repairs, and we'll do those, but we won't do the expensive repairs." And I think now they're starting to talk about, okay, maybe we do need to factor in all the information that we have from all the vendors that inspected the balconies, and that's the information we can't cherry pick the information. We do need to do, repair what we've been informed needs to be repaired.
Well, again, I'm thinking it's a 50-some-year-old building, and yeah, maybe the west-facing ones catch the evening sun, and so maybe they're a little drier than the east ones, but you've got deterioration all around, and so maybe you can stage it a little bit, but the building is 50 years old, so you're starting to see indications that they are addressing the reality of their situation, and they aren't, can I use the word, stuck between their plan to avoid this big cost and the reality that they have every inspection report that you left in the file for them says that there's work to do.
Yeah,
interesting.
Exactly. So the gap is really how to pay for these things, and you can always spread out the project to pay to lessen the burden of payment.
You could do it over 5 years.
Yeah. But even with the master repair plan that we had in place, it was going to be a multi-year project. So without any financing or without a loan, without a special assessment, there's no way we can replenish our reserves fast enough to cover these costs. And in addition to all the other reserve expenses that you normally have, the roof will come up for renewal, for repair. The other waterproofing projects come up. There's other repairs that need to be done that will need reserve funding. So even if this was in isolation, we would have a hard time.
Yeah. And you still live there?
I do, yeah.
Okay, still live and own. And have you gone to a board meeting since the new board's been in position?
I have, yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, the new board is, trying to change the culture. They're trying to do more things in person, because we'd kind of shifted to Zoom during COVID, as many people did, and then we were slowly kind of going back to more of a hybrid. But now the new board wants to kind of create community, I guess, or at least that's what they're saying.
Good for them.
To have people. Yeah, have to have people come together and to actually see the board members. So all the board members were there at the board meeting in the clubhouse. There's food and drink, and it's a bit more of a kind of encouraging people to come to board meetings, which is great, because typically attendance at board meetings is very low. So anything you can do to incentivize it, I think is great. So yeah, that's the culture now. They're trying to change the culture. We've come through a lot of anger and fighting, and so I think they would like to try and
do some healing.
Yeah.
Okay, good for them.
Yeah.
There was a time during our conversation where, like I said, the hair was sticking up on the back of my neck, but now I'm actually feeling a little bit of sympathy for the new board because they got themselves in a jam. They've made a lot of promises, and it's going to be really hard to deliver and not be the new bad guys.
It's hard to make these decisions, and everyone wants certain things done and certain things repaired and things that are important to them. Different amenities are important to different people, and it's hard as a board sometimes to have to say no to some things.
Well, looking at the time, it's about time to wrap this up. I want to remind you or tell my audience about this one resource that we mentioned, Helen, you and I, earlier. It's a case study that you can get from the Community Associations Institute, CAI. It's called Capital Projects, a Case Study, understanding the connection between financing, communication, meetings, bids, project team, and more. And it's about a big special assessment renovation project for a high-rise in North Dakota, I believe, but a fascinating story. And if you want to read more about this and add, double your case study, because we've got one here with Helen, you can get the $20 case study from CAI. And that's another resource if you guys are facing something like this at your association. Helen, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on today's program and tell your story. Any final thoughts to share on your board member experience to share with our audience today?
Well, it sounds like a sad story. It sounds like a failure. I maybe don't sound like a board hero, but I do hope that the story has been helpful. It's great to be a board member and to it is very satisfying. But it is hard, and it does take courage to make tough decisions. So I'm just sending courage to fellow board members or out there in the world.
Yeah, we talk about great attributes for boards being that you care, that you're curious, you have courage, and that you communicate. And you were talking about a lot of those things. And I just want to press those buttons hard. We want to thank Helen for performing a thankless job well, a job that doesn't reward you, even in the light of her association's current change of leadership. Not every story has a happy ending, but I don't think this is the actual end of this story. When the allure of low monthly assessments or absence of large fees turns out to be a mirage, Mother Nature and Father Time, they tend to find a way of always winning. I expect it won't be too long until the new board realizes the challenges that they're facing are exactly the same challenges that Helen and her board were facing. So I look forward to Helen actually being reelected to the board. I think it's associations across the country that benefit from people like Helen being on the board, and get a few other clear-thinking homeowners with her. And I hope to be the one to share that next chapter of her story with you. Well, we hope you gain some HOA insights from Helen's story, and that it helps you bring common sense to your common areas. And remember, if you match our definition of a board hero or know someone who does, please reach out to us. We love having board heroes on our program. Our contact details are provided in the show notes. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. If you like the show and want to support the work that we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing that you can do is engage in the conversation. Leave a question in the comments section on our YouTube videos. You can also email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members that you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the hosts and guests, with the goal of providing general education about the community association industry. You'll want to consult licensed professionals before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.